Today we're going to do practice test 70, game 1, I believe it is. Let me double check. Yeah, practice test 70, game 1. It should be about a concert promoter and 6 slots at a concert. So go ahead and pull that up. And if you are new to one of these classes for logic games, what we do is we kind of go over one game in depth throughout the entire time, and then we let you all kind of go along with me, and we let you diagram it out, and then from there we kind of work through the problems together, and I give you all a chance to do it before I do it, and then we all kind of talk about why the answer is correct and why other answers are incorrect. So yeah. And if you have any questions at any time, feel free to shout it out. And let me go ahead and give me a thumbs up on Zoom whenever you guys are ready to go. Practice test 70, game 1. Let's do it in the chat real quick so everybody's not shouting out. But on a scale of 1 to 5, what would you say your logic games level are at? If it's like if you've never done any before, 1, you've done a little bit, 2, and then go from there. 5, I think you're pretty good. Or if you want to say out loud too, you can. Feel free.
I'd probably say 3.
Okay. Okay.
Like there's some that I don't know, like there's games that I just like I was studying this past weekend and I did like a game like all in my head. Like I was just like I did a lot of deductions in my graph. And then there's some that I'll miss like something like dumb that I should have probably not missed. So I would say 3 just because I'm like rusty. Like I'm still trying to know how to be faster and just do better graphing.
For sure, for sure. So, all right, well, anybody else want to share or yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I wanted to ask, what is this game about?
This game should be about a concert promoter. Is everybody seeing that?
Oh, perfect. I see it actually.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Well, so today we can also go over some tips like how to, I guess, speed up. So we'll go through that. So thank you all for showing up. So we'll get started. Does anybody want to read out the stimulus for us?
I could take it. A concert promoter is filling the 6 slots at a benefit concert. The slots from earliest to latest are numbered slot 1 through slot 6. The slot will be filled by 6 bands. I'm just gonna say the letters.
Yes.
U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Each band will perform in just 1 slot. The order must meet the following constraints. V performs in an earlier slot than Z. W and Z each perform in an earlier slot than X. U performs in one of the last 3 slots. Y performs in one of the first 3 slots.
For sure, for sure. So and I'll give you all a minute or two to kind of diagram it on your own, and then when we're finished, or if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and shout in chat, and then when you're done, I'll give you guys like 3-4 minutes to diagram it, and then from there we'll go through. So when you diagram it, try to have all rules diagrammed and try to have any deductions you can make diagrammed, and then from there we'll come back, I'll explain my diagram, and we'll go from there. All right, so once again, sorry about my handwriting, but this is kind of what I did for my diagrams. Hopefully yours looks somewhat similar. For new people, I do my diagrams a little differently than other people do. A lot of people like to use like lines underneath it for ordering games or things like that, like little like placeholders. I find this way to be much easier and a much more efficient way because I can just keep working below it, and I'll kind of demonstrate as we go on. So here we know here at the top left, we have U, V, W, X, Y, Z, right? So those are our game pieces we're going to be putting into this game, right? So from here, we know we have 6 people performing, 6 bands performing, and we know we have 6 spots. So it works out. This is a very strict linear ordering game as far as 1 person for each, or 1 band for each spot, and nothing too tricky going on in that regard, right? So here for rule 1, we know V comes before Z. Rule 2, we know W and Z both come before X. Rule 3 says U equals 4, 5, 6. and rule 4 says y equals 1, 2, 3. So that's what our basic rules look like. Does anybody have any questions about the initial setup or the rules? And go feel free to shout it out or message in chat if you're more comfortable that way, whichever way. But if you feel free and let me know if you're good. So.
Wait, I had a question. So, like right off the bat, you
Mhm.
wouldn't make scenarios where like U is last or X is last. You would just like cross off what can and can't go in each slot.
So yes, so I don't. So some people do like to directly diagram these. Like it's like I don't. I have two. I can only have X and U in this last spot. That's after making these deductions. So I haven't got there yet. Basically, I'm just saying if anybody had any questions about the initial setup, then I'll kind of go through the deductions. So I don't necessarily just plug those in at the beginning. So go ahead.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
So no questions on the initial setup. All right. I'm gonna eliminate my deductions real quick. And I'll go through it real quick to kind of see any deductions you can make, right? So we know it's this ordering game. So I know I'm gonna have V before Z before X, right? Because we know we can put that chain together. And then we know that Z, we know Z also has to come before X, right? So here we know that V cannot be last, right? Basically, because X has to come after it, or because Z and X have to come after it, right? So we know V can't be last. We know oh, sorry, I have two of those. Let's see. W. Sorry about that. We know V can't be last, right? By same reasoning, we know Z can't be first. Is everybody clear on those two basic ones? Do we
Yeah.
see why that is? Okay, cool. And if you have any questions, feel free to shout out if I'm moving too fast or anything. So we know those can't be first, and that can be last. Next, we can see, okay, Z can't be last because it has to have, there has to be X before it, right? There has to be X after it. So Z can't be last. Same with W, so W can't be last, right? And also for myself, I see, okay, Y also can't be last because it has to be 1, 2, or 3, right? So here I immediately notice, okay, I know there's only two things that can go in the 6th spot. It is either X or U, right? So that kind of helps us game plan and know, okay, no matter what, I'm gonna either have an X or a U in the spot. So that kind of helps me see that. Here I then know Z can't be first. I know X also can't be first because it has to have Z before it, right? And I also know U can't be first. So on the ends, that's kind of our deductions we can make. Next, let's go to the 5th spot. So I know V can't be here, right? V can't be here because Z and X have to follow it. So obviously V can't be here. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
And like I said, feel free to say no if it doesn't. And same thing as X can't be second, right? Because it has to have a V and Z before it. So X cannot be second. X also can't be third though, because it has a V, Z, and W before it, right? And also we know that Y has to be in one of these first 3 spots. So we know X also can't be fourth, right? Does everybody see that deduction we made? Or how we got there?
Yeah, can you go back and help me with that, how you got there?
Yeah. So because we know, so when we're looking at, okay, what's the earliest X could be, right? Well, we figure that V, Z, and W could all be in these first 3, right? So V, Z, and W are in these first 3, X would have to be fourth, right? But then Y is not 1, 2, or 3 then. Y would have to be 5 or 6, or in 4, 5, 6. So we know we can immediately put Y here. We know Y has to be somewhere in these first 3. So we know if X is fourth, X has to be 5 or 6 because Y has to come before it, if that makes sense. Is that we see why that is or no?
Yes, I forgot to include the Y is either 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah, this deduction is kind of a more like a more trained, I guess, more experienced eye can kind of catch as far as like saying, oh wait, I know I have to have Y 1, 2, 3. So I know if we're trying to put X here, and there's 3 things before it, I know that eliminates the possibility of Y. So X has to be 5 or 6, right?
Right. That makes sense.
So we know you can't be second and you also can't be third as well, right? Just because rule 3. So those are the initial deductions we can make. Are there any other deductions that anybody else can see? I think we've kind of cleared out as far as initial. This is why strict linear games are nice, is because you can cross so much off the board. And as you'll see as we go through the game, you'll see how much this kind of helps you with the questions and how easy you can get them. Right? So I'm going to give you all a couple minutes to go over number 1. And when you all are finished, come back here, give me a thumbs up. So is everybody seeing kind of how question 1 was super easy after we made our deductions? Or are people actually diagramming it out? So we already said V can't be number 5, right? So we can immediately look at the answer and say, oh, B. B cannot be the band that forms not alive, so B is the correct answer. We move on. Do we all see kind of how that goes? And how quick that was? Are there any questions about this one? Okay. Well, if there aren't, so what I would do in this case, I know this isn't a typical game because it's not a grab rule question, right? So has anybody seen any of the new people? So what I like to do is I like to say, okay, number 1 was right here. And then instead of drawing a whole new diagram, I do number 2 right below it. Does that make sense? Okay. So I think I like to do this because it keeps me organized. Instead of having like all these people have like all these diagrams across their sheet, I just do one big diagram per game and just keep going down. And it really helps me keep focused and keep organized. Yeah, exactly. It's so much time saving drawing lines, so much time, all of that. I don't know if a lot of prep tests teach it this way, but it's the way that makes the most sense to me. And I think I should, that's why I kind of, because the grouping games are kind of like this, so I use them for ordering games, and it really helps me keep everything in line and everything like organized. So, any questions about number 1 then? Okay. Well, if not, then I will leave you all to do number 2 for a couple minutes. We'll come back at the 20-minute mark. Anybody want to share their answer and how they got there?
Sure. I got C for which was the correct answer. Yard sign can only be in one of the first 3 slots, so the latest it can go is slot 3, which would leave which is the only possible one for zircon performing before it, because before zircon is always V, whatever that stands for, Vegemite. So the first 3 slots have to be they have to be VZY, and then if you plug Wellspring in the 4th slot, it works fine. It's WUX, and that's the earliest it can be.
Yeah, perfect. That's exactly how I did it. Anybody have any questions about that explanation? Do you all see how like a good setup really helps you and prepares you for this game? So yeah, I think that's the perfect answer. I think that's the perfect way of going about it. As soon as you realize, okay, earliest slot in which W performs. So if you put, obviously we know Y can't be, if Z is before Y, we know Y can't be second. Well, we know Y can't be first. Y can't be second because B has to come before Z. So we know Y has to come third. At that point, you just check if W could be 4th, and it could. So you're left with C. Any questions about this one at all? Okay. Well, if not, let's move on to the next one. I'll give you all a couple minutes to do that one. We'll come back at 24. Let's say 24. I'll give you all a few minutes. Does somebody want to give me their answer?
I got B, and I usually have trouble with these, the must be true, because I'll do the graph and then I see that everything works out, but then I remember like, okay, well, the rest of them, it's kind of, I don't want to say give or take, but you could always switch them, but the rule must be that W performs earlier than Z, because if you try to put W on the other side, where I was looking at, I was like doing it in my head when I did that. I graphed it, but I try to put W on the other side. Then that means like U and X, or X just wouldn't fit, and then it'll break a rule. So it had
Yeah.
to be true that W had to be in the first three, basically.
Yeah. So what I did is I kind of did mine actually down here. If you see that, I did it more below the game, right? So we know we have V and spot 3. So we know 3 spots are after it and 2 spots are before it, right? So if I know 3 spots are after it, I know in some order I have to have Z and X, because that chain up there, right? V, Z, X. I know Z and X have to come after it. And I also know U has to come between 4, 5, 6. So at that point, no matter what order I have, I'm gonna have ZXU over here somewhere, which means I have to have YW over here. So we know Y has to be in the first 3, and then we know W has to be before X. So because I know W will always be on the left side of V, and Z is always on the right side of V, or yes, Z is always on the right side of V, we then know that B is the correct answer, because that must be true. Anybody have any questions about this one?
Hi, Michael. I have a quick question.
Yeah, fair way.
So is it okay, or is it not okay? Is it more so efficient and effective that I diagrammed two separate diagrams where I did CXU for 4, 5, and 6 and UZX?
I think it's not necessarily the most efficient, but I
Yeah.
see why you got there. And I would say it could be more efficient if you do that, because then you see, okay, U before X, got it done. Then W performs earlier slot than Z. As long as those are the only 2 options, then yeah, I think that it's still an efficient way to get there and a quick way to get there. So I don't see any issue with that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
This is one I kind of realized after making that initial setup, where I realized these are kind of the blocks. So I see W has to be before Z no matter what. So
Yeah,
as long as it gets you a B in a quick way, there's no issue with that.
okay. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions or anything about this one? Okay. And let's move on to 3, which says let's move on to, this is at 4 now. 4. If Z performs immediately before W, which one of the following must be true? So the first thing I'll do to solve this one, it's a little trickier. I'll put the ZW block and try to put it everywhere, or try to find what goes after it. Kind of like we did this one. ZW block, see what goes after it, see what goes before it, and then go from there. Did anybody get the correct answer, and kind of who hasn't shared yet, who wants to share? Okay. If not, I can kind of just go through it. So the correct answer would be, it would be E, right? So we're looking at which one of the following must be true. So we know that no matter what happens, this must always be true, right? So, let's go from here. Let's kind of look at how we set this up and kind of how we do this, right? So if we know we have a ZW block no matter what, right? So I know I have ZW in there, right? Well, I know X is gonna have to follow this. And I know I can't have a ZWX block, right? Does anybody want to explain why that is?
Because U has to be in one of the last 3 slots.
Exactly. So we know that then after that ZW, we have to have a U after it, right? So we know U and X have to come after ZW, not necessarily in either order, right? Which is why I did it kind of down below, right? And now we know that V has to come before ZW because of rule 1. And we know that, let's try to put ZW in spot 2, right? So VZW, but then we know kind of reverse rule that Y would not be part of 1, 2, 3. So we also know, so if we put V Z W, Y wouldn't be here either. So neither of these work out, right? So we then know that ZW block would have to come at 3 and 4, right? So as soon as I see that and know that, I'm immediately going to scan answer choices and see if one of these, if Z or W being in one of these 2 spots is one of the answer choices, and bam, it's an E. So as far as like a way to speed up your logic game and kind of go a little faster on these must be true questions, the first thing I do is take what they give us, try to put it in there, and make sure that like no matter what, these have to be, instead of doing all these different ones where, okay, this one works, the W block could be here. I find where the deductions can be made, where these spots are different, like definitely figured out. Then I check the answer choices before making further games, or before diagramming further, I guess, options. Does that make sense to everybody? How I got there, or do we want me to go through it one more time?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't really understand.
Yeah, which part? Everything?
Well, just your method for tackling questions like this.
Yeah, so when it comes to must be true questions, so let's say like last question, right? They're asking about, okay, if V performs in slot 3, which one of the following must be true? So immediately I put V in slot 3 and try to figure out kind of if there's any other thing. Like, let's say we know that V has to have a WZ in before it in that order, right? I immediately put those in there and kind of use all the rules to make any like definitive spots in there. So I put the spots in there and try to find other ones where it's definitely that way, and then look at the answer choices, if that makes sense. So here I was able to see that, okay, because of the rule that Z has to be right before W, I then was able to figure out that Z and W have to be 3rd and 4th. So I look at the answer choices and to see which one matches that, because it's a must be true question.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions about this? Go ahead.
Michael, I immediately didn't go to the block of VZW.
Okay.
Instead, I went by into, that's where it didn't come out so efficient. I actually went by Y1, Y2, Y3, and then trying to figure it out from there, but I ended up confusing myself. But how did you immediately get to where you were able to be like, okay, ZWX can't go 4, 5, 6, and VZW can't go 1, 2, 3. Like me immediately getting to that thought process, I didn't get there until later on.
For sure. So I think this comes with practice. Once again, I think it's one of those things where I think it's a lot of it is training your brain to kind of think like those deductions. But as soon as I see ZW, right, I know, okay, this functions as a block, right? Because that's what the game's giving us, saying Z immediately before W, right?
Yeah.
Well, I know that X would have to be after ZW, right?
Right.
So I know we have to have the chain is like this, right? The chain would be V before and X after, right?
Right.
And because I know Y and U both have to be on opposite sides, that's kind of how I got there. But as soon as I find that kind of block in the middle, I'm saying, okay, where could, because we only have 6 spots, I'm looking at where could this block fit in? We know it can't be 1, 2, and we know it can't be 5, 6, because an X and B have to come, B has to come before it and X has to come after it, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. That makes a
Okay.
lot of sense. Thank you.
No problem. And then, like I said, then I see, okay, can that block be 2 and 3? So I plugged it in, put the V before it, and then realized I have no place for the Y, and kind of realized the I guess contrapositive is true as well with the U. So it's more about seeing these games and recognizing what they're trying to test, and kind of trying. Anytime you get blocks of anything, I would recommend trying to put it in there somewhere. Because oftentimes, only a few spots they can go.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. And if you need any more clarification, feel free to ask. Because that's one where you could totally get bogged down by putting Y here and then Z, and then trying to figure it out from there. Because you could totally get caught into that. So I totally get that. Because here the V and Y could switch, right? So Y could be here, V could be here, and X and U could switch, right? So U could be here, X could be here. So that's kind of how all the other answer choices are actually. You see that that's just them switching those two around, or it being incorrect in general.
That makes sense.
Sure. Well, any other questions on this one? Otherwise, we can move on to number 5. So number 5 states, which one of the following is a complete and accurate list of bands, any one of which that could be the band that performed in slot 1? So I'll give you all a couple minutes to do this one, and feel free to send a thumbs up when you finish. I think this one might be a little quick. All right. Does anybody who hasn't shared out an answer want to explain their answer and kind of how they got there?
Yeah,
can-
sure. Oh,
You can go.
I got D, and I just got that from like the initial deductions that were made. Yeah.
Yeah. Essentially, that's it. This one, I think it's kind of, that's why those deductions in the beginning can be very nice, because I see, okay, I know that U, X, Z can't be in there. So I mean, I know that like the other ones can be. I didn't eliminate them, so I kind of see, okay, I know the last one's not right, and then from there I can just see V, W, and the Y could be there. Any questions on this one? Chances are of these kind of questions, a lot of the answer choices will be covered by deductions. But if you missed one, I would do the one that kind of eliminates most. So I see yard signs in 4 of these answer choices. So I'd test to make sure yard sign can be first, because if it can't be first, then B is the correct answer. Or I would try to eliminate the most at once, if that makes sense. If you don't have these by deductions, as far as a tip to kind of get a little quicker. All right, let's move on to 6 then. So if W performs immediately before X, which one of the following could be true? Watch that could be true, because this is like number 4. However, it's just a could be true and not a must be true. So these ones are a little more difficult, and I'll give you all a couple minutes to kind of go over this one, and we'll come back at 42. All right. Josh, do you want to lead this one? Did you get the right answer?
Yes, so I got D, Z performs in 2. So if we looked at our earlier boards, actually number 2, we did number 2, we wrote it out. You can see that Z can go in 2 if we do V dash X dash W X with the box, so that we know that W immediately precedes X. And then if we follow the rules accurately, we would find that Z can go in 2, and then Y and U can move around within 1 to 3.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's one of the benefits of doing it the way like I like to do it. I'm not doing it here because it's harder on a whiteboard, but I think making sure like when you go down those things, I can almost go back and look and say, okay, what's the previous one that worked where W is right before X? Do I have any of those? And if so, do any of these answer choices fit one of those? That would be the first thing I would check. So I actually didn't check that. This one's a good call on that, Josh. But kind of what I would do as far as like a more general thing, if you don't notice that, right? I know, okay, we're looking for W before X, right? We're looking for W before X. We know there's only 2 spaces where WX could be, right? So WX could be here, right? Or WX could be here. Those are the only two options. We see why that is.
Yeah, because X could only go in 5 and 6.
So once we see that, we can kind of play around. We look at the answer choices and we see, okay, U in spot 5 doesn't work. V in spot 3 doesn't work either way. Or I guess, wait, does V? Hang on, wait, what did I do wrong? Let's see. Well, yeah, V can't be in spot 3 because Z has to be before it, right? So V cannot be here, right? We see why that is. So V can't be there because of rule 1. So we know V can't be in spot 3. Eliminate that one. Z being in spot 2 is possible because we have Z, V, or we could have V, Z, Y, right? In either case here. So actually, if you just try to prove it this way, you could do that by drawing 5 different game boards, but I think this was an easier way. And Z performance spot 4 we know is not possible. So as far as a tip to kind of recognize this faster, when I realize there's only 2 ways that WX can, when I see there's only 2 ways WX can be in there, I immediately try both ways and kind of see what other, fill them out a little bit to make sure I know it this way. But if I wouldn't see that, honestly, what I would do is I'd try, okay, U in spot 5, or if I put U here, I'd be okay. I know I have to have WX in here somewhere. I know X, because we already saw that X could only be 5 and 6, right? I would now, okay, WX this way could work, WX this way, and WX couldn't be any earlier. So because I saw that, I would say, okay, then I would look at those answer choices and go from there. And I know you can be 5. Does that make sense? Or is that a little tricky to everybody? Are there any questions about this one? Okay. Well, if there's no questions, then let's move on to the last question, which is my least favorite kind of question. I think the one that nobody likes. So which one of the following, if substituted for the constraint that W and Z each perform in an earlier spot than X, would have the same effect in determining the order in which the bands perform? So this is a substitution question. You'll probably see like one of these in your exam, maybe 2, but these are probably the ones I always skip and save for the end. So what I do in these kind of scenarios is I try to find I eliminate that rule and try to find a rule that leads to the same conclusions, if that makes sense. It leads to the same deductions. So I'm going to give you all actually till 50. And after that, I'll try my best to explain it and kind of how we got there. Any questions at all before we go away, or before we let you all do this? Okay, if not, go ahead and try this one and go from there. How are we all doing? I know I said a couple more minutes, but some people were done. So, and this is a very difficult one, so no worries. I'll give you all another minute or 2. All right, let's go over this one then. So does anybody kind of think they have the right answer and want to give it a go on explaining it?
I can give it a go.
Go ahead and give it an attempt.
This is actually my favorite question. I'm just kidding.
This is your favorite question?
No.
Okay.
But it's lucky that we have the substitution question in the first game, which makes it a little bit easier.
Okay.
So what I think about when I do questions like this, one is, like you said, Michael, make sure it has the same effect. And then I paraphrase the second test. So you mentioned instead of make sure that it has the same deductions, but also making sure it doesn't mess up our boards that we previously made. So for question choice A, it tells us nothing about position of WZ to come before X. So it's too open, too broad. And then for B, it says it's VWZ, but we know from our earlier boards that Z can go before W. And then C, VWX, we see across our boards that is possible and achieves the same effect as the rule WZX. So that looks good. You know, it's not too limiting, too open, just right balance. D, XU, X can go before U or goes before Y. Doesn't tell us anything about W or X. And then for E, X can go in either 5 or 6. We know that, but it doesn't tell us, oh, does that mean that WZ is before X? So that's why I chose C. You might have, Michael has a more sophisticated
So
explanation.
actually, A is the correct answer.
Oh, A is the correct answer? Then I'm entirely wrong. So this is
No,
great.
you're good.
I also
I'm-
picked C
Okay.
because of
yep,
the
let's go
same
over-
reason why.
Okay.
Like
Let's
A
go
has
over-
nothing that said.
Yes. So although A is not saying anything about W and Z, it is in a way. Because it's saying that we know because X and U can only be in this last spot. And because with our current rules, we know X can only be in 5 or 6, right? We then know that this, by having only uneasy can come after X, we know the only places where X could be then would be 5 and 6, like this kind of rule is forcing us a little bit. And also, we then know W and Z both have to come before X. The reason I would say C isn't right is because then, because it has V performing before X, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that Z is performing before X, right? So if we have, so let's say, let me see if I can kind of game it. So let's say we have, oh, wait, I don't know that. But okay. So the reason C doesn't work is because we know that Z says that what? V and W are before X, right? So looking at V and W are before X. You know? So that's kind of what we're looking at, right? We know Z is after V, right? So we could still, by this rule, that would not violate anything. We could have X here, U here, V, W, and let's Y here, and Z could come over here. Do we see why that is? Does that make sense as to why C isn't the correct answer?
Why is
Because under the old rule, this obviously wouldn't work because Z has to be before W, right? Or Z has to be before X. But under this new rule, if that's substituted in, it's not saying anything about Z. It just merely says that V has to be before X, but it's not necessarily that V and Z are in a block. If V and Z are in a block, that would be true. But because V just comes in before Z, this could work.
Okay, so on my end, I could see why C doesn't work anymore because it violates the
Yes.
rule that we're trying to substitute. But then A says only U can go before X. I don't know if I'm paraphrasing it too loosely or not precisely.
Only you can come after X, right?
So
Oh, only U can. I'm sorry, you go straight. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
no.
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, the way I'm understanding why A is right is because we already know that X could be only in 5 and 6. And so I'm graphing it right here and I'm writing out what I was thinking. And so if you could only, so that means I say X is in 5 and U is in 6. So W and Z would just have to come before that. Like there's no possible way that
W and Z can never come after that. If
yeah. So I'm
If
just graphing it
X-
and writing it down.
Yep, because this is. Does that make sense, Josh? Or do you want me to kind of go through it one more time?
That makes, well, you know what I did? I read it. I read A wrong. I thought late. I thought later meant before. So I
I see.
read that wrong. So now I understand.
Yeah, because U being the only one that come after, we then know that forces X to be either 5 or 6, which is kind of what 2 is doing. If any of you all don't feel that comfortable with logic games, these questions are very intimidating. And one you can only get one that I really just judge based off of feel kind of. It's the one where I don't ever have enough time to actually do it during an actual logic game. So don't stress if you got this one wrong or if it's challenging to you. Do you all have any questions about this last one?
Sorry, since we have a few more minutes, could you go over it one more time? Why
Yeah.
A is the correct answer? Sorry.
So we know we just prove. Let's just prove all the answer choices and kind of show why they're not right. So we know that A works because what is rule 2 at the core of it? But what is rule 2 at the core of it actually doing? Without rule 2, X can be anywhere on the game board, right? So rule 2 is forcing X to be 5 or 6, right? Do we see why that is?
Mm-hmm.
So here we're looking for rules that force X to be 5 or 6. So E says X performance in your slot. So where X performs 5 and 6, with also W and Z being before it, right? We're trying to have that same effect. So E may look appealing, however, there's nothing saying that Z or W can be after it, right? So we can eliminate E. Do you understand how we eliminated C, right? Do you get that part?
No, I didn't really.
Okay.
Well, actually, no, I did understand it. That's what you did first.
Yep. So let's go over B. So V performs an earlier slot than W, which performs an earlier spot than Z. V before W before Z. But this doesn't say X could perform at 1 then, right? And we could have U, we could have Y in here, U in here. It's not really forcing X to be later on, right? So we can eliminate B, right?
Right.
And then let's go to D, which does say X can be performed immediately before or after U, right? So it would make sense because U can only be 3, 4, 5, 6, or 3, 5, 6. But you also have X here, right? This works. X, U. And if I have X, U here, that technically follows that new rule. I know I have to have Y. I can have Y, V, Z, W, which wouldn't work in the in the original game. So what we're trying to do here in these substitution games is, or these substitution questions, we're trying to find games under this, like you're trying to find a game that wouldn't work under the original rules under this new rule they're giving you. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, I think I understand now why I got this wrong. Okay, when I wrote my rules, I kind of just did the tree with V before Z and WZ before X and didn't write individual trees like the rules. So when the question asked what would achieve the same effect as this rule, meaning rule 2, I thought it meant like the whole tree with V before Z and WZ before X. So I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, so just make sure you isolate that one rule and try to find something that has a similar kind of outcome. And then if you can't figure it out from there, I would try to disprove the other ones and try to quickly look at them.
Right. I should have written the rules more clearly.
You're good. All right. we have any questions on this one then? I know it was kind of complicated. If not, we have any questions overall?
I had just like a general question for logic games. What's the best way to like quickly see improvement? Is it just like doing practice problems or figuring out efficient ways to practice problems?
Yeah, when do you plan to take the LSAT?
April.
April, okay. So you have what is that, 6 weeks?
Yeah, just about.
For sure. So we're planning April, 6 weeks. I'd say 3 or 4 logic games a day. I know it's a lot of time. That's a lot of time. I do a section a day at least.
Okay. And like timed, would you say?
Time. Are you getting a lot of them right, or are you not gonna like how are you doing on like scoring? Like, you know,
Like on a timed full section, I'm getting like -5, -6.
oh, on a timed full section. Oh, now you're doing good. I would just I would time I would do 10 I would do what I would do is I give you 10 minutes for each individual one,
Okay.
and then I'd start like working it down to 9 minutes, working it down to 8 minutes, and try to
Okay.
get everyone done in 8 minutes, and then at that point you have plenty of time by the end of it.
That actually makes sense. Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. Any other questions? Okay, if not, next there'll
Well-
be a study group. Oh, good. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I just had a quick question. So for questions, for substitution questions, do you try to, I know it's kind of hard just to, it's not like math, like for other questions, like, oh, we know this is immediately right. It's success to us. So for questions like this, we would have to test each one, correct? Because some answers will seem very obvious, like, oh, that's completely wrong.
Yeah.
So-
Some will once you have done the game, so they ask it last. But as far as like finding the exact one, I normally test all of them if I have time. If I don't, I go with the one that feels the best. The one that doesn't look too. It's kind of a feel thing, honestly. It's one of those ones where I never have enough time to finish it all. That's always the one I miss. If I miss one, that's always one I always missed. So really, it's just about finding that sweet spot, about recognizing which, and if to prove it wrong, you try to find a game that wouldn't work under the original rule set. That's how you prove it wrong.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Michael.
No problem. Thank you everybody for coming out. It's a great class today. I'm glad to see a lot of people. So it's good.